This is how to cake it. I'm Yolanda, and I am craving a burger. And maybe some fries on the side. I made sugar cookie fries over on Wilton's YouTube channel. Check it out. I want to thank Wilton for sending me all these awesome products to make this burger cake happen. I'm using their ready-to-use white fondant. Yes. Their Color Right Performance System. Their cocoa candy melt. And Wilton icing colors.
Sorry.
Yeah, you sound sorry. Doesn't Jocelyn sound sorry? I start by baking a 3-pound portion of my vanilla cake in 2 6-inch round pans. One pan has 2 pounds of batter and the other pan has 1 pound of batter. I remove my cakes from their pans and I start working on them one by one. These 2 pans are gonna be our buns. That was weird. Can I do some jazz hands? These pans are gonna be our buns. I begin with the bottom bun, which is the lower cake. I level that and then I flip it over and I start to just sort of round off the bottom, just like a bun. Buns. I use a small serrated knife and I just carve away my cake little by little. Remember, you can always cut off more, but it's harder to put back. So be safe when carving. Once I'm happy with my buns, I give them a crumb coat, as I usually do with my Italian meringue buttercream, which you should make. Click the link in the description. This is just a light icing to really glue all the crumbs to the cake. When you're done crumb coating, pop your cakes in the fridge to chill for about 15 to 20 minutes. Once your crumb coat is chilled, ice your cakes one more time. They don't have to be iced as smooth as usual because the surface of a bun is not that smooth. And once you're done icing, pop them in the fridge to chill again for 20 minutes. It's fondant time! I need to cover these buns in fondant. This is one of my first times using Wilton ready-to-use fondant as well as the Wilton Color Right system. I've used 1.5 pounds of white fondant. What I'm actually gonna do is color a little piece of fondant first. I add 2 drops of base yellow and 1 drop of base brown, and then I start to mix that in. I knead those drops into my 1/4 pound of fondant really well, and what I end up with is a really concentrated bun color. So I take this piece of colored fondant and I start to knead it into the rest of my white fondant. Make sure you knead your fondant well. You don't want any streaks. A good way to check is to roll your fondant into a ball and cut it in half. And when you look inside, if you see streaks or marbling, you want to avoid that. Keep kneading that fondant. Time to roll out this fondant and cover my buns. I feel like I'm like losing the jazz. It's gone from like, and it's gonna be like, buns.
Don't lose the jazz.
I'm gonna roll my fondant to 1/8 of an inch thick. I'm covering my buns one at a time. The bottom bun first. Just cover it, smooth out the fondant, mainly using my hands because as I said, I don't want it to look like a really perfect, weird bun. I do use a fondant smoother at the base just to bring the fondant right to the base of the cake so that I can trim the excess away. I repeat this process again for my top bun, rolling out my fondant, draping it over, smoothing it with my hands, and then trimming away the excess at the bottom. This is actually an easier cake to cover with fondant because it's not very high and there aren't sharp edges that would normally rip and tear your fondant. It's nice and low with a smooth little dome, so it's a good starter cake. I did not have a hamburger model because I would have eaten it. I haven't eaten any of my other models. Right, Walter? He's not answering for some reason. I need to take this bun to the next level. This top bun needs sesame seeds. I'm using some gum paste, just about like 1 ounce, and I colored it with some of my leftover bunny fondant, just because it's such a small amount. If I were to add food coloring, it would instantly be too dark. All I do is pinch off little pieces of gum paste, roll it between my fingers like this, and then kind of squeeze like a little tip, and then I just drop it down. And now that you've mastered that, do it 2,000 more times. I'm gonna make this bun look even more bunny. I'm gonna paint a layer onto both my bottom and top bun just to bring out the color a little bit more. For this, I'm using Wilton Ivory icing colors mixed with a little bit of lemon extract. Brush lightly onto the bottom bun and the top bun. To be honest, Wilton Ivory is one of the colors I use the most in this kitchen. I use it a lot to paint the outside of cakes and really deepen the color, but I also use it in bright colors to just sort of mellow them out. I hope you finish making all of your sesame seeds because we need to throw these seeds onto the top bun while it's still wet from painting. So I hope you didn't just skip ahead to the bun painting. Did you?
Yolanda, your buns are looking great.
Thank you. It's the genes. I'm gonna place my complete hamburger bun in the fridge to chill while I make the rest of this burger. I'm moving on to the patty. I'm making my patties out of marshmallows, cocoa melts in light and dark, and cocoa rice puffs. I start by melting my cocoa candy melts in the microwave in 20-second bursts. You don't want it to be piping hot. You want them to be melted with no chunks and nice and smooth. Then I pop my marshmallows in the microwave and melt them. They only need about 30 seconds. It's really weird because they kind of like puff up and don't look like they're melting, but once you begin to stir, they're definitely melted. Then I pour both of my chocolates into my marshmallows and heat that whole mixture for 20 seconds. Stir it up, and then really quickly I pour in my cocoa rice puffs and begin to stir. And then I actually just grab all of it and use my hands to knead it together into a patty. I made myself 2 patties for this burger because I'm that hungry. But make sure that your patties are bigger than your bun. There's nothing worse than getting a hamburger at your table and you can't see the patty. I find it infuriating, actually.
That's not a word.
It's not?
Infuriating.
Oh, yeah.
But I really, you know what? On how to cake it, it's infuriating. So I'm getting a little infuriated.
Set your patties aside at room temperature and just let them, what's the word? I'm not good with words, I realize. Set! Let them set. And now, let us make lettuce. To make my lettuce, I start with gum paste. I knead it in my hands and then I roll it out really thin as I can get it. Before I shape my lettuce, I use a flour impression mat to get the veins of lettuce. All I do is lay my rolled out gum paste on top of this mat and then just sort of press with my fingers to really get in the groove. Once I'm happy with my veining, I use a sharp knife to trim away any excess gum paste around the edges. Then I use a ball tool to further sort of ruffle those edges of my lettuce and make it look, you know, lettucey. This is ruffling, clearly. Jocelyn, they know what I'm trying to say. To help your lettuce dry in a realistic shape, I like to roll up paper towel, ball it up, and then lay my sheets of gum paste onto that paper towel. You should make this lettuce a day in advance because we need it to dry before we move on to painting. To paint this lettuce, I used the base color yellow and the base color blue from the Color Right system, but I found it a little bit bright, so I used some ivory gel color to mute it down a bit. And all of this was diluted with lemon extract, and then I just brush it on my lettuce leaves. It's helpful if you hold them in your hand. They are quite delicate, so just have a loose hand. I'm gonna move on and make some red onion slices. What I did here is roll out some gum paste and then I painted the surface, just the top surface, using the Color Right system once again. I used base blue, base pink, and base crimson to get that red oniony, it's like purple but a bit reddish. So I just diluted those colors with a little bit of lemon extract and brushed that right onto the surface. Try to brush this mixture on in an up and down motion to make it more realistic. Then I let that piece of gum paste dry for just a little bit. The lemon extract does evaporate really quick. So I'd say about 5-10 minutes. And here's what's important. You need a very sharp knife, and then you need to have a towel beside you that is both wet and dry. And what we're gonna do is cut this gum paste into thin strips, but you need to wipe your knife off every single time. And this is because you don't want to drag the color down to the white part of the gum paste, because that's not what an onion looks like. As you cut the strips, lay them on their side. I use 2 rulers to squeeze those strips all together. And then I carefully started to bend the strips around into like a half circle. Once you have a nice little half moon of onion strips, take again a clean knife and just cut off the ends so it looks like, a cross section of onion that's been cut in half. You want these to dry in a natural formation as well. So once again, your trusty paper towel, and then just lay your onion slices on the paper towel. If they start to come apart, that's actually perfect because that's what onions do. Up next is tomato. To make a tomato, I used some red fondant, and what I did is I just rolled it out to about 1/4 of an inch thick, a little less actually. And then I used a round, about a 3 1/4 inch circle cutter to cut 2 rounds of tomato. Of course, there are ways to make this tomato look very realistic. I would have used seedless raspberry jam, and I would have made tomato seeds from gum paste. But the truth is, to go through all that work and just cover it with lettuce and a bun is pointless and a waste of time. We just want to see the outside edge of the tomato. So to make that look even more realistic, I'm just going to brush on some Wilton Color Right Red, not diluted, just a thin layer all the way around the circumference of both tomatoes. All burgers need mustard. That's the rule. To make my mustard, I've taken a little bit of Italian meringue buttercream, and I've dyed it using Wilton lemon yellow, golden yellow, and buttercup yellow icing colors. Just mix your color in little by little until you're happy with your mustardy color. The relish was really fun to make because it has texture. To recreate the chopped up pickle found in relish, I chop up green apple licorice and green wine gums, and then I used some clear piping gel, as well as some Wilton leaf green and moss green icing colors, and near the end I added some golden yellow icing color just to tone down the green. I did water it down with a little bit of water just to make it look more translucent. Final touch for this cake is, of course, cheese. I'm using white chocolate modeling chocolate dyed to look like cheddar cheese. I'm gonna roll it out to 1/8 of an inch thick, and then I'm just gonna cut 2 nice squares that will rest nicely on my double patties. It's time to make this burger. This is the part I love the most. It's both exciting and a little bit scary. So I'm just gonna assemble this like it's a real burger. Before I add any more toppings, I need to melt this cheese a little bit. Anyone who watches How to Cake It knows where there is modeling chocolate cheese, there is a blowtorch. You know what, guys? All this talk of burgers and fries and ketchup is really making me hungry. Jocelyn, my lunch? You guys almost saw Jocelyn. What am I doing here? I'm honestly scared. This is a lot of cake. Oh! I can't breathe. 1 second. I'm a lady. Thank you for joining me this week on How to Cake It. A big thank you to Wilton for sponsoring this video and helping me make my dream burger cake. And don't forget to check out my French fry and buttercream ketchup video on their YouTube channel. There's a link below. Look at how small my bite is in this giant burger. It's like a mouse bit it. I couldn't breathe for a second because it was bashed up against my nose.